Okay.
All right, go for it.
Hey, I just wanted to follow up on some conversation we had at working group earlier today. I just want to make sure I had the arguments right? Because I do have to synthesize it and present to the other people. But I think that what we're concerned with was, if Gen Packages is going to be making a bomb in the Docker files RC, right? We don't want this thing or its dependencies to be present in the final application image. That's point one. Point two is how do we get rebase working in this scenario?
Yes, and so just to clarify on point one, it's the Genpack binary and any additional tools of Genpack, right? That we don't want in the final app image.
Okay. Um, I guess I'm concerned with what is Genpack, right? Is it SIFT, like SIFT, a binary that could be SIFT, right? Pretty much just SIFT package export, blah blah blah.
Yeah, I'm somewhat unclear on this, but from my interpretation, yeah, it's essentially a script, right, that
Yeah.
allows you to execute whatever you need in order to generate the SBOM
Hmm.
that would then be attributed to having additional information.
Yeah. Okay. I did that completely. But this rebase point is something I'm really having trouble with. What is the if you generated packages and you rebase, the bomb will be invalidated, right? So you need to remake the bomb, right?
Okay. So this isn't something that I thought about too much about. I know Sam has, so I wish he was here. But let's think about it through step-by-step process. So right now the rebase is an operation where all we're doing is changing a couple of layers,
Yep.
right? And repointing those and creating a new config from those new layers.
Yeah.
Um, in this new scenario with Docker files, what that would mean is we would do the same thing, but before we can do that, right, we would have to make an operation on the run image. Is that a true statement? Or would we have to glue them together?
No, I don't think so at all, right? This is why we need the label. We can just take the base image and we can take whatever the layer that has the bomb in it and then use that instead, right? That's the ideal, right? If you can do that, I think that's completely possible.
Can you explain that again? Sorry, maybe I didn't follow.
No problem. So you take maybe the run image, right, and apply it as the base, right, for your new application image. And you'd have to choose, right? There's an old image and there's a new image bomb. There's a new old image bomb and new image bomb, right? You would want to take the layer, there's another step now, which is take the layer of the new image bomb and put it also with your new sandwich, right?
Okay.
You don't, hopefully you wouldn't need to run your gem packages script, right? Because it's already there.
Okay. What does gen packages do? When does gen packages get executed?
I'm not actually sure of that myself. Like I'm assuming that, when the image is hosted somewhere, it's been pre-run, right?
So
But
then,
yeah.
then why do we need it in the base image?
Well, where we need to put it somewhere, right? We don't need it in the base image. We've been saying this. We don't need this in the base image. We could put it like, the cosine solution, we put it somewhere else, right? But for right now, putting it on it and then putting a label where the layer is maybe expedient, right?
Okay, so if you're looking at the RC here, I'll share my
Yeah.
screen. You got that?
Yeah.
So Gen PKGs. Should Gen packages be part of this proposal? Opinion, yes. Otherwise, it's difficult to maintain a valid SBOM. But then when we talk about Gen packages, it's very vague. So it says Docker files that are used to create a base image must create an Gen packages executable that outputs Cyclone DX formatted list of packages in the image
Ooh.
with control IDs, right? Okay.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay. No, I'm glad you did this because I think I was lost. Okay, I see.
This executable is executed after all Docker files have been applied and the output replaces the label as bomb. Okay, so it's executed after all the Docker files. So in a run image scenario,
Yeah.
we take the run image,
Yeah.
we apply
Extensions, right?
all
That's
these,
what we're calling. Yeah.
which yield Docker files, we apply those Docker files, and then we run gen packages to create the new SBOM layer or
Yeah.
set of files.
No.
Is this what's generating? Yeah, so this is generating the runtime image SBOM that you have, right?
No, it's creating it for the stack though, right? Like, the one I have is for the build pack dependencies, right? The ones that you only come after you do build pack build. Make sense?
No.
Okay, no,
Could you elaborate on all the different type of SBOMs? So there's SBOMs for
yeah.
the build pack dependencies, right? Or we're talking
I
about the
see.
time or build or both.
No, this is a good question. I'm also fuzzy on this too. So let me try.
Yeah.
So like, let's say we're building a Go app because Go's all I know, right? You have a Go build pack that installs Go, right?
Mhm.
The Go build pack is going to give you an SBOM for Go, right? Because that's a thing it put on maybe for you, right? And did it Go build? Maybe got some dependencies and it's Go build, whatever, right?
Right.
But if you're modifying the base image and then you put curl for some reason, right, or something, right, to maybe you use curl to get your Go binary. That's how the build pack. Let's imagine that that's how it worked, right? Whatever. Then you need something to describe the curl, right, that you've put on. And then and then that could come as an extension. Like you have an extension for putting curl on your base image, but not Go, right? Curl. That's what this gem package is for. It's for the base image and the curl that came in your extension. And then you need something for Go, which is going to come from your build pack.
And is there another one? Is there one that's baked into the run image for all the stuff that was pre-installed on the base image?
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess it's my internet. That's a good question. I don't know. I thought there must have been, but now that I'm seeing this, I'm gonna double down on it and I say yes. I'm gonna say yes, right? Because that's the only way it can work, right? After you run the extensions, you're replacing something that must exist already, right? This is purely speculation here. I don't know, but I'm saying there has to be one already, and we're replacing it. Otherwise, it'd be weird if you need to run an extension to get your BOM, right?
So your RFC is the statically defined one, right?
That's right. That's right. It's statically a yes.
Your RFC is for the statically defined one.
Yeah.
Then we have another set of SBOMs that is generated by the build packs during
Yes.
build.
Yes.
And then there's another SBOM that is generated by Docker files gen packages.
Well, see, what I'm trying to do is we're trying to precede this with that, right? Like we're trying to say, okay, whatever gem packages would make, this is the initial, like let's say before we run any extensions, right? Like we're trying to say, all right, gem packages should make something that looks like this, right? It should have this label, right? That it was the other label before, but we've had discussion, we've changed it, and it should put things into this directory. That's literally all I'm trying to do with mine, right?
Okay, so you're not saying supersede gen packages. You're saying
No.
precede as like it's setting up the structure for which
Yes,
packages should then adhere to.
that's right.
Okay. All right, so those are the same. That makes sense. So no matter what, we always run gen packages, whether there's extensions or not.
Uh, I see. Okay, I don't know. I don't know that, right? But I would think that when the stack author makes their run image, it's already run by them, right? I don't know if lifecycle needs to run it or anything like that, right? But it has to be it should be predefined.
Now I'm back to confused.
We want that. Listen, we want this label on, like, well, optionally, right? If to describe the contents of your image, and extensions are optional, right? You don't need to extend your image at all.
Yes.
We don't want the extension process to run so that we can have gen packages there.
Okay. So then the way I see it is that there's a baked in
Yes.
of it.
Yes.
And if they could, that's one option, right?
Yes.
The option where you could just bake it in. There's no gem packages, there's no hooks, there's no nothing, right?
Yes. Yes.
There's the option where you could still have those baked in,
Yes.
right? But you could utilize hooks. And then if you have hooks, we should also execute gen packages.
That's right. Yes.
Okay, hooks, gen packages. And then what gen packages will do is it would override any pre-existing baked in SBOM.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so that's definitely a lot clearer for me now. You can see where a lot of the ambiguity here is from one paragraph to that.
No, yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
Okay. Okay, so now that I have a better understanding, stepping back, right? The concern is this gen packages being on the final app image. So gen packages and other dependencies. So is the quick solution that the I was going to say, okay, I'm just going to throw it out there and you tell me how terrible of an idea this is that you could have your gen packages, but you have to identify what layers to exclude from the final run image.
I'm not gonna say that's terrible, only because that was the first thing that came into my head too, right? I couldn't. Um, this is a lot of work, right? That way we could exclude it, right? We could like exclude it when we make the final. I just didn't think it was clean at the first time it popped in my head. I just didn't want to say it in working group and look like an idiot, right? Because it just didn't seem like a clean interface. There has to be a cleaner way to go about this, right?
Okay, let me run with it for a little bit. So on here, it talks about output replaces the label, SBOM, which I think you changed the label a little bit. But so it'll have to do that no matter what,
Yes.
as a secondary step.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because the way that I could see us building this base image now with this sort of complexity is you would do an initial build, right? I'm thinking just standard Docker builds right now. So you would do
Yeah.
a build that then includes your Genpack
Yeah.
stuff. Hypothetically, you'd run all of that, or in preferred method, you would run all of those in one step. So therefore, it would yield one layer.
Yes.
Okay. Then you would have some other process that searches for that layer or other layers, and then adds those diff IDs to excluded
Oh, I
layer,
see.
right? So search and index, search, index, and label. Extra those Genpack layers. I think that would be good enough, right? Maybe. So that would be good enough. And then when the hooks execute, right? So this is all pre-compilation. Or pre-build pack build, if that makes sense. And then during a build pack build, we execute the Docker files. And then we could look at the image and say, okay, these are the layers that would then be excluded from the final app image. So we could do manifest or config manipulation to exclude those.
Oh, okay. I mean, I don't know if it has to happen in that way. I mean, honestly, I think it could be up to the exporter, right? Like it could be all the way at the export level. And we just make sure we add the run image and then exclude this
Right.
label, right? But yeah, in essence, I'm agreeing with, in essence, what you're saying, right?
Okay. Hopefully we haven't been barking up the wrong tree. And now that Sam is here, he could.
I think I just jumped into a really serious discussion, so I was just listening.
So we're trying to find a path forward for the runtime SBOM stuff. While I think in the short term, to keep it in parity with what's going on or what's going out for the other SBOM, the build pack provided SBOMs, is to keep them in the app, right? And so I think you don't have a problem there. We all, I think myself and you agree that it'd be better to have sidecar, but we'll cry about that later. But in trying to resolve this, I think the only piece that I recall or understand is the Genpacks, a way to exclude those from the final app image. And that's kind of what me and Anthony were brainstorming, which was essentially to require that the Genpack related layers be labeled in the run image so that they could be excluded after it is executed. like during the export phase or the rebase phase?
That's the part like which is really hard for me to grasp. That works well when you're starting with a run image that was maybe generated by us. So like you start with a base image, then you try to attach a gen packages binary or whatever to it. How does that work when you're dynamically changing base images or like just using a different one? Because like one of the things that this RFC got rid of was like being able to dynamically select base runtime images, right? So like
Could you repeat that again? It removed what?
let's say I have a set of build packs, and then we detect that only the Go build pack is running, in which case I want my run image to be a scratch image. So I dynamically switch that over here. It just means that the dynamic switch, for that dynamic switching, each of your run images must have that gen packages binary bundled in the way that bundled in some way that it works. And then it also means that if you're starting with let's say you created a run image that was packaged with gen packages and you add more layers on it on top, like after you use the from base image stuff, you let's say add a few packages there dynamically. I don't know how, like what the plan is to like handle all different use cases of dynamically like. So the point is we don't want to restrict users from the kind of base images they want to generate, right? Like that's the point of this RFC. And then we just need to make sure whatever we do to introduce this gen packages variable or like the executable, like allows users to still dynamically modify their run image that they're going to use while still being able to use gen packages with it and it not ending up in the final app image. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense, but stepping back, right? Like there's a couple options, right? Either they run it every time they make the image, right? Or I guess we run it ourselves, right? When we do any build. Are you in favor of one of those?
I mean, in this case, I'm guessing we are running it, right? Because Lifecycle is running gen packages, they're just providing the binary. How would they run it?
Okay. Well, my understanding was we're only running it when we have hooks, right? Like you don't have to have any extensions, I would assume, right?
True. In which case, you're just assuming that they have a base image with SBOM already attached the way you have for the other RFC.
Yes.
And
I mean, I want to allow that as an option, right? That should be.
yeah, that makes sense to me. And if I want to dynamically switch my run image, does that mean for each of those run images, I would have to pre-attach an SBOM?
What do you have a proposed alternative, Sam? Or
I really didn't. That's why I didn't include this in my original RFC, and that's why I kept it out of scope. Because the more I tried to think about it, the more I realize it's going to be really hard to include it in the base image, like with the base image, and include the output SBOM in the output image if you want to do operations like rebase fairly easily. Like there are a lot of constraints on how that file is present and where that file is present in order for us to do a quick rebase. All of those problems go away if you just have your like SBOM elsewhere. You can.
Is that true though? I thought you would need to run gen packages inside of the base image after the box, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also something we need to. What if we could? I'm trying to think of a way of signaling in the Docker file that hey, all the layers after this are just for Gen. I mean, a lot of this goes away if the lifecycle comes, or like whatever your builder is comes with the Gen packages and which is standalone. And if you're doing a Kaneko style build, like where you're replacing the contents entirely and your orchestration binary lives in a separate independent folder, Gen packages could live in that separate independent folder, still run on the run image, create a dynamic run image, attach an SBOM to it, and ship it out. That's fairly easy to do in the Kaneko use case. In the Docker use case, it just all goes to shit.
But I think that, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but the gen packages, that's an arbitrary script, right? Like that could,
Yes.
whatever we want it to be for my enterprise versus your enterprise could differ greatly. I think that's one of the counterpoints to having a build or CNB provided gen packages.
Or just something that is attached to an independent layer, like in that Kaneko element. So like if you're creating a builder, like you will have some initial builder that contains the lifecycle, right? And you put the lifecycle in CNB, lifecycle, whatever. I'm saying that if the gen packages stuff could also be put in a special path such that it doesn't interfere with where you're or how you're generating the dynamic run images, then however we are running lifecycle, we could run gen packages the same way.
That's not bad, right? Isn't this the use case of utility build packs, right? Like maybe this is a utility gen pack.
Don't
Gen-
start, Anthony.
No, okay. I'm just
No, I mean,
No, I'm not
maybe
saying that we should create gen packages binary. I'm just saying we should set some strict guidelines on what can be a gen packages binary. I mean,
sorry, I guess I'm of the opinion that we should be providing it because otherwise it becomes too hard, right? It becomes really difficult if you need to set all these rules that you're supposed to enforce and make sure that your run images adhere to, right?
I think that's like the same argument for the platform, right? Like it's really hard to create a platform. We can provide maybe one reference implementation, but like if you want to create your own, we shouldn't stop you, which will allow other projects to create their own. It'll have harder constraints than what this RFC currently declares, but that will make things easier.
Okay, well, what's at stake here, right? Like if you want to say creating a platform is complex, I think that makes sense. But we just want something that generates a BOM file, right? Like we just want this binary to exist somewhere. Like
I mean, and there are lots of open source tools that will currently fit this criteria, like the SIFT binary. That's a standalone Go binary that you can just put, that'll work.
Yes.
So like something that simply wraps it up, or some way if you can conform to whatever SIFT's flags are. So like if we can say, here's the binary, and I can decide the flags or indicate the flags that should be passed to it in some way, that'll make things easier. So like you can just take the SIFT binary, it outputs cyclone-dx, it outputs SPDX, it outputs the SIFT JSON, and that's your gen packages binary. We don't even have to provide it. We just set the constraints that, hey, it's a standalone binary. We give it, we'll allow you to pass in certain arguments. And,
yeah,
that's my thinking.
okay. So I mean, it sounds like we're trying to find different solutions or options for this idea of gen packages, right? I guess I want to maybe step back and say the relationship between this RFC, the one with run image SBOMs, and this one is more or less simply the fact that there's a annotation about SBOMs here, right? And if you think about this as a preceding, right, of just setting up the foundation of where information should be stored for the SBOM, regardless of how we generate that SBOM, right? Whether it's baked in, whether there's gen packages once we have Docker files so that you could, get an updated version of it and all that. Could we create that sort of separation and say, like, is this good to move forward with, and really just kind of put the brakes on this RFC and say, because I mean, one paragraph does not do this justice. Anthony and I were talking about this. Like, it doesn't give us enough clarity of exactly how it works, what, when it works, and so forth. So I think we could definitely elaborate on that. But I guess the best question I can come up with is, should it really block this RFC?
I mean, the reason I'm so skeptical around all of this is that you've seen how quickly this whole SBOM landscape is changing. And like, even with the build pack specific one, we spent a lot of time trying to make it generic so that we could switch out formats, keep it decoupled from our API as much as possible. Just hoping that, like, whatever we introduce for the base image, like, still allows us to adapt to that format. And like any new formats, whether it's storing SBOMs, creating SBOMs, the format they're created, and still allows rebase. I know it's not a part of this RFC, but it should at least not introduce any changes that would prevent us from rebasing things easily in the future if we wanted to.
Okay. I have two thoughts. I'll start with the latter one first. So in this current RFC, right, outside of having to update the label, do you see any other concerns about rebasing? If we're not talking about how we get the SBOM, right, just talking about where it lives, how it's annotated, do you see concerns with rebasing?
Nope. If the way it specifies things, those roughly look fine to me. We can put it should contain a layer holding SBOM. I think we should be more explicit that it needs to be a single layer containing just the SBOM in the first point. But apart from that, those 3 points look good to me in the summary.
Okay.
Okay. Well, there's the other point.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. There's the other point Stephen had about the name of the file, right? He didn't want run or build in it. He wanted the digest or whatever. He wanted the digest of it just so it wouldn't collide in case you wanted to build one in it. Do you care about that? Or
I think that's just going to be really hard to implement. I don't even know how you'll implement that.
Well, it'd be a multi-step Docker build, I guess. You build the image first, and then you get the digest, and then you attach it has to be multiple steps anyway. I guess he's imagining a semi-sophisticated script to do it.
That line of thought or reasoning, like associating an SBOM with a digest, if we've come to that, I would just prefer if we use the cosine format that does the same thing, doesn't mutate it, keeps it as a separate image. I mean, that to me works better than this.
Okay, that's fair. That's a good response anyway. I just wanted to know. I'm also not. That's a Stephen point. That's not mine.
Yeah. I mean, because what you have here, that can still be done with, like, I don't know.
I mean, you still have to do multi-stage for the diff ID.
Yeah.
Multi-step, not even multi-stage. Like, literally, you have to execute.
Multi-step. Yeah.
And again, I am totally full on with you on the cosine thing. It's just the fact that I'm not a fan of the disparity between the two SBOMs.
That's something
That is my
like I'm just thinking in terms of folks we'll be breaking, it'll be platforms, which is a handful, rather than build packs, which are plenty. So I'm not too worried about that when we get to that change in the future. What I am worried about is like exposing something that makes life. So like I consider whoever is creating build packs would typically be the person owning the stacks at this point. Like,
yeah.
so I want to make their lives easier rather than the lives of a platform implementer, which is like at this point there are 2 or 3 of them.
There's many more. All right.
Yeah, I mean most of them just use pack, in which
Yeah.
case it's just a matter of updating pack. The rest, I'm talking about things that just call out to lifecycle explicitly.
Mhm.
And I mean, pack has a minus bomb command that just outputs the bomb. That API doesn't have to change. So that's a user facing API. KPack has a similar API minus bomb. It doesn't have to change. So I'm saying in terms of actual end user impact, moving things for that build pack API change from a in-app layer to a cosine layer, that'll have like that should be mostly transparent to end users.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm just saying that whatever changes we make here should follow a similar ideology. Like we should really not be introducing changes because like it's an emergency and then it hurts us in the future when we're trying to preserve backwards compatibility for all of these versions, and then something new has come about and build packs can't get onto it because like we're too invested in our older APIs. Like that was a huge issue with this bomb RFC in the first place. Like we were so invested in this bomb table format that like trying to come up with a new way of specifying bombs while still preserving compatibility for the old one was it took a lot of time for that RFC to go through because of that.
Sorry, when you're saying cosine will break things will be transparent to end users, like are we talking about scanning tools? I mean,
I'm talking about scanning tools or tools that want to get an SBOM from the image. So like even in terms of scanning tools, I'm assuming that like I actually had a few ideas in terms of scanning tools, like for things like turn and gripe. I was like actually like at the end of the day, not everything is going to be built with build packs fit. There's always going to be some generic image scanner that people will have to put in unless we get to a point where everything is built by build packs. And what I was imagining is if once we decide on this format, if we could augment all these scanners so that if an image is built by build packs, your output SBOM is generated much more accurately and quickly than it would be if it wasn't. So you still get the same interface. So like if you run Sift run or whatever with a build pack image, I don't know if they would be like they should be reasonably accepting of the fact that if you have SBOM files in the image, it should include that in the output. So like if it finds that was another point for including the extensions in the SBOM. So like all these scanners, if they just look at the extensions and try to get them and use that as a starting point, that would. So I'm at this point, this is like a completely different thread, but I was thinking like how scanners would integrate seamlessly with build packs while still looking for other images, and that was like one thought. So in that case, this again works fairly well. When we do get to the cosine SBOM thing, I'm assuming at that point we don't have to do much at all. Like the current cosine SBOM format was created, I think, considering the Willpacks usage in mind, where you have multiple layers and SBOM describing a specific layer. So like when the RFC was initially drafted for the cosine format, like that was one of our requirements to have content addressable layer specific bombs.
Right.
So like the reason they did that, like to have layer specific bombs, was because we asked them to. And that, like, it would be nice if like those things eventually end up in the like whatever OCI artifact version of SBOMs we end up with. But I think that's like cosine works right now, and it's a good example of how people are doing things. Like lots of large projects are already using it to attach SBOMs to their signed images. And I think that's going to force a lot of scanners to accept that format. Like Kubernetes, I think, started signing images with cosine. They already generate an SBOM, although with SPDX. And I'm assuming, I am not sure if they currently use cosine to attach the SBOM, but I don't think it takes a lot to like do 1+1 from there. Like if they're already signing images with cosine and they already are generating an SBOM, we might as well attach it.
Okay.
I mean, that's just my line of thought. Like I know how important it is to have this so that you have a complete bill of materials for your output application image. I'm not trying to block anyone. I'm just like thinking, what are the consequences of including something that just works for one API version, and then our newer features may make it difficult to implement the API we are suggesting.
Yeah. I guess next steps. I want to be a little bit, I guess maybe overly optimistic here, but it sounds like we're in somewhat of an agreement that this stuff is good, right? Like it can most likely go. There's some reservations about it potentially breaking in the future. And to make us feel more at ease, it would be nice to know exactly how this would operate, right? Be able to solidify this piece.
Yep.
To minimize that risk of having to change it yet again on the next point version.
Yep. I mean, as long as we can come up with a way to solve this, I'm completely fine with the other one going through. Like that RFC makes sense to me. Like I'm fine, and I accept that we might have to do a multi-step thing to attach the SBOM. That will also be future compatible. So if we do move to like a cosine thing, like back attach SBOM could just create the attached SBOM on the registry instead of creating a new image and putting it on there. Also forward thinking. This thing, I am not sure.
This hideous thing. All right. Yeah, I think that's something that we can work on. I know, is Steven out for a while? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I can tell you he's gonna be out for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, I do wonder, maybe Anthony, you and I could sit down and expand on this Genpacks thing and try to remedy some of those concerns to say like this proposed solution would work. We could even explore additional solutions or options and kind of prove out that at least those would work in the confines of the other RFC, the run image.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I'd be game for that.
Cool. So we have a little bit of time left. I didn't want to go too much into like a side quest, but what was the turning point in which we decided to say no to something like the attached artifacts or the associated artifacts versus embedded?
It's like we didn't say no. Is that the order of operations didn't match up. We'd not introduced, when I wrote that RFC originally, cosine was not as popular. Things had not adopted it. And in the 3-month period or the 4-month period it took to get that RFC merged, it was, and at that point it was sort of late. And we wanted to ship those things out because it was like high time we supported all of these things. There was again a decision made out of urgency, which I'm just trying to prevent from happening again.
Okay, that helps. That definitely helps. I mean, on the positive light, we could spin it as we just wanted for the ecosystem to mature and allow for different media types and so forth, right? Is that still a thing? Are there still OCI registries that don't support custom media types?
Very much.
Cool. All right, so there you go. That's the other positive there. We're just waiting for stability. Anything else to discuss?
I mean, regardless of these RFCs, I think we need a cosine RFC. So
do you want to, I guess, take point on that? I think you're a cosine expert at this point.
I'll try to get something on. It's just like my last few weeks have been like running from one week to another, trying to get things under control. But yeah.
I know the holidays are coming up for us. What about you all over there?
For me, because like when the US folks would be out, I'll have some free time to do things.
There you go. We'll teeter that way. Yeah. All right. Well, I don't want to hold you all up. I'll give you 8 minutes left. Sound good?
Yeah, great office hours. Thanks for facilitating.
No problem. All right. Have a good one, huh?